It's lights out and away we go. Welcome, everybody. Hello, racers, to the Hard or Soft F1 podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Huff, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, RJ McCullough. How's it going, RJ?
Hey, man. Good to see you. Another incredible race.
Yes.
It pains me to say this, but not only did Max win, but thanks to that, I now have another punishment because you have Max on your team, the sinister stepdad, as I've seen him called in some places. And so now I'm just gonna get this over with to chug this Red Bull.
Yes.
So I'm gonna play this. You hear that? All right, here we go.
Oh my God. Yes. Oh my God. Destroying it. You might as well have shotgunned it. You're going so fast. Jesus Christ. I'm glad he can't hear me. He might spit while laughing. Oh my God. What a legend.
A little bit of spillage, but
oh my gosh, dude, you were faster than Latifi.
Well, I mean, that's not saying much, but whew, ready to roll.
Oh my God. Yes. So
Quarter to 11 on a Sunday night.
11. Yeah, it is 11 p.m. on March 27th, Sunday. Oh my gosh. I love it. Yes, Max is on my I guess we're calling it our fantasy team. I guess we each have 10 drivers. I have Charles and Max. So that's two punishments in a row for you, unfortunately. So now that you've done two, what was worse, the chugging the Red Bull or the 5 or 6 Moscow mules?
Oh, certainly the Moscow mules. It's not even close. That was like kind of tough, but I'm going to be burping a little bit, but so pardon me for that. But yeah, I'd rather do that every day than having to do the Moscow mules again. Not that they were bad. It was just a lot. So
yeah.
But
well,
yeah.
hey, I think you've now drank one more Red Bull than everybody that works for Red Bull.
Yeah, I don't imagine that it's on their approved diet list.
No, every time I see Max with the big Red Bull cup, I'm like, I know there's water in there.
Oh yeah,
Max is not drinking Red Bull.
Absolutely. We have a ton to get to, so
yes, nicely done though. Fucking congrats.
I know my undying love for Lewis is kind of backfiring early in the season because I need him or Russell or who else my other guy or Carlos. Carlos could win for me because I need just for balance. I need you to start doing some punishments here.
I know, for real.
So yeah, we'll get right into the fantasy bracket points thing. So going guy by guy, you were victorious this week with first and second place finishers. So you won this week 64-38. So that brings the season total to 115-89. You have a 26-point lead after 2 races.
Yeah. See, but here's the thing: when Max and Charles inevitably crash into each other, that's when you're going to gain and you're going to actually take the lead at that point, because that's got to be inevitable, honestly.
Yes, 100%. I mean, they're very clean today and they were clean last week, but once things get a little more intense as the season goes on, I'm sure there's bound to be a couple of flare-ups.
Dude, it's already more intense to me, at least, than the start of last year, which I didn't think it was possible, but it's definitely because, it's obviously a completely different driver going up against Max at this stage, but I don't know. There's just something about it. Maybe it's because it's so, I don't know, the new era. I don't know. There's something about the energy this year that's just different, and I love it.
Yeah, I feel like last year it was intense with just the 2 guys at the front, but they were so far ahead of everyone, and now it's like the entire field, even guys on their own teammates are battling amongst each other, which we'll obviously get into the race and everything that went on this weekend. An insane weekend. Couple like news and notes, I guess you'd say, before the race and all that started. So first up, there is a Las Vegas race that has been announced for US Thanksgiving 2023, unless I'm mistaken. So what do you think about that, Mr. American?
That's crazy. I did not know it was going to be scheduled for Thanksgiving, but honestly, that's just so American, so fitting in Las Vegas. My biggest hope is that I'm actually not extremely familiar because I know they've raced in Vegas previously, like years ago.
Right. Yeah.
I think I've seen it referred to as like a parking lot race,
Yeah.
but there's been some talks about them like going all out and like doing it like on or at least right next to the strip, which that's what I want. Like, let's do that. That would be so badass.
Yeah. I think everyone wants that. Last time, I'm not exactly sure because it was years ago, but it was something like in a Caesar's Palace parking lot or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't great, but and the heat and everything just insane. But yeah, I don't know. I think everyone wants it to be on the strip. That would be amazing. I don't really know like the logistics if how they can shut down the strip for an entire week, but I mean if they can do it, if they've got the money to do it. So
Hey, I think they know how many fans it's going to bring.
yeah, and like 3 races in the US. I don't think people outside of the US or North America necessarily realize how big the US is because there's been some complaints online about like, oh, why do they get 3 races? Like they're not even the biggest like F1 fan base, but like a majority of where the races are in Europe is so much closer. You can go to so many more races than you could just living in the US. So like even though there's 3 races, they're still very, very far apart.
I definitely understand like the take of being like, it's unfair. They have 3 races, but like I live in Georgia in the southeast part of my country. If I wanted to drive to the northwest part of my country, it would take me 3 or 4 days. Like if I drove straight and didn't stop 3 days, like it's massive. And I don't even live close to Austin. Like that's also the South, but that would be a 2-day trip. Like it's ridiculously massive. So I'm totally for it. Obviously, I mean, I'm biased as fuck, but I'm super excited for it. My only concern is that, and I know this is also going to lead into sort of our next topic, is that will there be too many races on the calendar? Because it already feels like it's pushing it a little bit.
Yeah, like what's gonna go? I mean, this is well, it's kind of like you said, segues perfectly into our next topic. So they discussed what's his name, Stefano Domenicali, the Formula One CEO, had a quote saying that, and it got a little bit misconstrued. He had a quote saying there's interest for 30 races on the calendar. Not that they were going to do 30 races, but that there's interest. So like everyone kind of freaked out. Like, no way can they, like that would be ridiculous. But just that there's interest. But even if they're adding, obviously now Vegas, so there's 23 this year, that'll be 24. They take like, and they're going to replace Russia. So I don't know, like 23, 24, how many more can they go? Like there's so much travel. They need the weeks off between, like they can't just go, like say they were going to Australia next week or something. That would be insane given the time change. So, and the travel obviously. So yeah, it's, I don't know. What do you think is like the perfect amount of races? And if they're going to, like what tracks are they going to get rid of?
Yeah, I mean, just from a fan's perspective, I felt like 22 was the perfect number. 23 felt like, okay, we'll add one more on. That's fine. That's just more racing. But I feel like 24 is like pushing it, but it's doable. And I think anything past 24 is just unfair to the teams and to the engineers. Like, oh my God, they're not going to have any free time. You're going to have to extend the season into the break. So that's less time for these guys to get time off. And it's less time for the teams to develop the car and work on the car for preseason testing for the next year. So
yeah, 100%. And like
I don't know.
In this situation they're in right now, like a guy like Vettel, if the races are even more packed, like they're just going to miss more races if like they need the breaks in between if something is to happen, or like say, God forbid, Mick were to have been injured, like more time between races does allow guys to kind of recover. So before we get into the race, just one more thing, pre-race, and we're not going to go too much into this because it borders on politics. The Aramco, I guess you could say, bombing that happened like, I don't know, 6 to 10 kilometers or miles from the track while they were doing their practice sessions. And it was so close that Max even said on his onboard that he could smell something burning, and he didn't know, like, obviously that there was something that just happened. So he's like wondering probably like, is my car burning? Like what's going on here? So yeah, any thoughts on that, and what, I mean, I guess you could also discuss like what it led to with the drivers and the team principals and the whole decision that they had to make.
Yeah, I think that that onboard of Max asking if his engine was burning or if something was burning. That's really just really eerie, because then you hear, I don't know if it was Christian or a Red Bull engineer, but you can go, it's not the car. That's all they say. You're just like, and I remember being like, oh, I was like, wonder what that is. But then you see the picture of George doing his, practice lap, and you just see a huge cloud of smoke behind him. It's horrifying. I understand the team principles moving forward, because it sadly kind of, Toto said that he was like, this is just basically the reality of living here, or racing here. This is just sort of what you have to accept. And he's right. But then that brings the question, should you be racing there at all? Because, I mean, we canceled Russia because of the obvious conflict that's going on. But then we're just proudly racing in Saudi Arabia when there's human rights issues. This was a whole topic a couple of months ago when they were in Jeddah at the end of last season. But I just personally think Jeddah just shouldn't. It just doesn't fit Formula One to me. It's there's too much risk involved to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's a fun track to play in the video game. It's a fun track to watch. Like, quali is very exciting, but it's like guaranteed at least one safety car. We didn't get a red flag
surprisingly
this week, but yeah, it's kind of like a bad situation waiting to happen. And yes, it was a little more tame having it at the start of the season, but there's just too many things, like just on the knife's edge moments where guys are just so close to going off, or just so many things that there's close to being incidents. And that's just the track. Then you bring in the whole human rights and everything that's going on outside of it, and the certain comments that are made towards guys like Lewis Hamilton, and just so much going on in that part of the world that it doesn't really seem right to me that they're rewarded, you could say, with an F1 race. But we'll leave that up to the those that are in power with F1, or the FIA.
Yeah, right.
But it's it just doesn't seem right.
Definitely not. And I understand that it's a difficult situation because there's a lot of Saudi Arabian people involved in the FIA, which, there's just so many moving parts and so many different ways to look at it. You can't just say we're not racing here. And I do know there was the talk about, there was a rumor going around that there was some sort of, I don't know if it was one of the engineers, but basically somebody saying that they were told that if they decided to not race and to not participate after the attack, that they may have trouble leaving the country. And to my understanding, that's not true. I'm pretty sure that I don't think it's that, war torn there that they're going to prevent them from leaving the country, but it's still terrible situation. Unfortunately, the sport just is always involved, or just not necessarily involved, but just secondhand involved in some sort of conflict. So I would like to see this track not come back.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just too much stuff surrounding it that you can't. The focus should be on the racing, and on the drivers, but it wasn't. So yeah, the drivers, in the aftermath of that, was it Friday evening, I believe, they had a meeting, a drivers meeting. First, the team principals came out and said no, we're racing no matter what. And then the drivers had a meeting for 4 hours. It's quite a long meeting. Would have liked to be a fly on the wall for that. At one point, and this is all rumors or hearsay, but from what I've read, at one point all 20 drivers were against racing, and then it kind of moved down to five or six that were against it very strongly. And then the team principals came in, and I don't know what exactly was said, but they went racing, obviously.
Yeah, that's part of the sport, but it's also, I just really feel for those guys, because I was stressed. Just the idea that the risk that something could happen shouldn't be there. There should never be a risk that an attack could happen. There's too many risk factors. It's just, I totally side and understand the drivers that didn't want to do it, because I wouldn't want to. And seeing the fans, specifically, during some of the shots, they would show the crowds, and there were families that were obviously vacationing and taking a trip to see the race, with their kids. It was just wild. I'm y'all, there's bombings happening. Like, what are you doing there?
Yeah, I don't really have any more to say on that. It's just like it's a wild scene. I think we agree. It shouldn't be there. It's easier said than done. Money talks, especially in whatever $1 billion business that they're running. But yeah, it's unfortunate that stuff like that overshadows the race. But Australia is next, and that'll be very exciting.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait for Australia. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome to see Danny back home. So on to qualifying. Q1, the big news for Q1. Unfortunately, Lewis goes out in Q1 16th. He was just out of qualifying for Q2, but nonetheless, I think it's the first time in many years, the first time that he was out on true pace since like 2009.
Yep.
Q1. So just very, very shocking, disappointing. He didn't really have words. I guess afterwards in the aftermath, we're still sort of finding out, but Toto said basically that they tried a new setup with his engine and it just didn't work at all. So George obviously did pretty well and Lewis did not. So that's that. What was what did you think as that happened?
It makes a lot of sense that it's a setup issue because it took me off guard because I was watching on my phone and I was like half paying attention because I was with some friends, but I was also like, Lewis, I was like, in my head, I was like, has he not set a lap? And then he set the lap and he was only 15th and then Stroll passed him right at the last second. I was like, just shocked, like, honestly, because, I may not be like a big Mercedes fan, but I love Lewis. I adore him. I think he's obviously the GOAT. We've talked about this, but just so shocking. And I felt terrible for him because even though it's not his fault, obviously, because Russell was able to set such faster times, it's obvious it's the car, it's not Lewis. So it still had to have been just gut punch. So I definitely felt for him. It was, I definitely did. I wasn't like happy or anything about it. I was just shocked, like, holy shit.
Yeah, not a good weekend for Lewis all around.
No.
Even before the race, he said he was just looking forward to getting home. So yeah, sort of funny. We'll get to the race later, obviously, but his onboard after the race, and his guy said, like, you finished P10. He's like, do we even get points? Is there even points for that? I'm sure, like, half joking, but
yeah.
And then
that's hysterical, by the way.
Just still cracking a joke in that moment. He's sort of taking it like, well, I mean, there's nothing you can do. It's, I guess, easier to take that than it would be if he was losing this based on his own like performance necessarily. Right. But still, so like that, I guess, is really P1 in a nutshell. And then P2 took a long time, and that's because just a very scary, one of those ones that as it's happening, you just feel like, oh my God, like everything stops and just waiting for any sort of movement. And actually, so we're talking about Mick Schumacher, a very heavy crash or shunt, as I believe they say. And apparently all of his communication went out instantly in the car as it happened. So the Haas team couldn't even communicate with him as it happened. That must have just been a terrifying moment. I mean, they showed the guy that I think is on the mic, and he looked like he had tears in his eyes. But yeah, just very scary.
Definitely one of the big negatives with this track is how dangerous this track is. Such high speed corners. I mean, I think the announcer said something like they actually only have to go full on the brakes 4 times in a lap, which is insane. There's just such technical corners in that spot. I think someone in Formula 2 had a crash at that exact same spot. I could be mistaken, but I did see footage and it was like so similar to Mick's crash. But that the moment actually on the Sky Sports broadcast when they're talking to Guenther right after it happened, he actually doesn't even know if he's okay. Mm-hmm. So, and he didn't even see the crash. Like, he saw it on the replay for the first time. He was just like, holy shit. Then they learned that thankfully he was all right. And then it might have been Will Buxton, I don't know, but he was like, are there plans to race the car tomorrow? And he's like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna add, is that of course after that he was he didn't race, and the car is just in shambles as they were trying to get it off the track, and it kind of like split and it was hanging by a thread, and Yeah, that took a long time, but rightfully so. They've got to clear all that up. So we get through Q2 into Q3. Very exciting Q3 again. That's one thing this track's good for. Like it's obviously dangerous, but it's exciting in qualifying.
100%.
So one quick thing, Kevin Magnussen said afterwards his neck kind of gave out during Q3. So then he was kind of off the pace in Q3, so he was 10th. But I believe he had to have like a lot of work done just to be able to race on Sunday. So interesting.
Jesus
It makes
Christ.
sense. He was just like called off the bench to come in just like 2 weeks before the season. So I guess it makes sense. There's so much strain on their necks, but yeah, that's scary. And then Checo's first pole, unbelievable. He was even surprised. Like just a great moment. After all, we've been talking sort of negatively so far about everything, but that was an unbelievable moment for everyone.
Yeah, totally out of the blue too. I mean, he actually said his second sector was yellow. So he actually lost time in the middle sector, but he found so much time in the third sector that he was able to pass both of the Ferraris when Max could not. And of course, I think Max complained about grip or that he made a mistake in the first turn, something like that. I'm not sure, but unbelievable. I love Checo. I was just so happy to see that for him. It was so cool.
Oh, Max complained. Shocker.
Big surprise.
Yeah.
We can I do have some thoughts about some of his remarks towards the end of the race. Yeah.
And just one last thing on Perez. Yeah, it's his first ever pole in like 200 and something races. So great for him. And he said in his post-race interview that he could have raced 1,000 laps and he wouldn't have raced one as good as that. So unbelievable, which is like
sick.
I mean, he obviously could have done a better second sector, but I think with the car too, the way it was, like maybe that was the best he could do in sector 2. Very, very interesting. So the top 4, it was kind of a Red Bull sandwich of the Ferraris. Perez, Leclerc, Sainz, Verstappen, top 4. Very set up for a very interesting start to the race with Verstappen coming in behind those guys. And then before we get into the race quickly, Danny Ricciardo was given a 3-place penalty because he held up Ocon. I don't think he did it on purpose or anything, but it was pretty obvious that what happened when you see the replay. Half an hour before the race, Carlos Sainz had a car issue, which was kind of scary, but Ferrari was able to fix it. I guess they fixed it 30 minutes before the race, but there's a picture I think Will Buxton put out of just like, I don't know, 20, 25 Ferrari pit crew guys just all around the car trying to fix whatever it was. So that must have been a bit of a scary moment. And then during the warm-up laps, another unfortunate engine error. Yuki Tsunoda, just engine kind of conked out. I'm not entirely sure what happened. I'm not a specs guy, but suffice to say, engine conked out. And once again, little Yuki Tsunoda was out of the race, unfortunately, because I want to see what he can do this year. So it's it's just unfortunate whenever that happens.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy that now all 4 of the Red Bull engines in 2 weekends have all DNF'd in a race at least once. That's crazy. That's insane.
Very crazy. I think every engine supplier this week had a car conk out at one point.
Yep.
You want to go through first few laps?
Yeah, absolutely. It was insane. I was really expecting some sort of incident, to be honest. And there almost was. Max was super aggressive going in, but even the announcers were like, that was just, it was an aggressive move, but it was clean. You know, Carlos could have fought it, but it probably would have taken them both out of the race. So he kind of held back, which was smart in the long run. But it was just, from the start, it was just insane. And one of the more remarkable things is that before what comes in a couple of laps, Sergio was actually finding some time on Leclerc. He was like 3 seconds ahead of him after like 10 or 12 laps, something like that, which I think is like really insane given like how powerful the Ferrari engine has been.
Yeah, I know, very exciting start. We were texting back and forth saying like, any chance Perez holds on to this? And like, I don't know. I kind of said, I'll admit it. I said, like, I don't think he holds through turn 1. Like I thought one of the Ferraris or Max would come ripping through. But yeah, he held strong. And then that leads leads to the next thing. I mean, we'll skip over the one thing, we'll get back to in a second, but yeah, just the horrible luck for Checo. Fantastic sort of gamesmanship or mind games played by Ferrari. Unbelievable. Yep. Just Leclerc pretending on the radio that he was going to pit. So Checo pits, and then right after Checo pits, Latifi I'm getting a little embarrassed that he's a fellow countryman at this point. Like, I think it's 3 races in a row that he's crashed out. Like, just not good. So he goes out. The yellow flag comes out, and obviously Leclerc's in first and has just got a free pit. So that changes the order up to and at that point also Lewis was making a little run up the field too. He was started on the hard tires. He got up to 7th after that. Didn't pit. In hindsight, probably maybe should have. But that was going on. As this was going on, maybe a little bit before this it started, and this lasted the entire race, was Ocon versus Alonso. The two pink cars, Alpines, it was kind of a combination of, oh my God, this is incredible, and what on earth are they doing? We both said, like, I can't wait to hear the onboards from this. Interestingly enough, after the race, they seemed like it was just like a friendly, they seemed to enjoy it, whether they're being honest or not. But I was expecting like some heated, especially those two guys. They're known to have a little bit of their tempers flare. What did you think as you were watching that?
Dude, I was shocked. What cracked me up the most was typically every weekend they'll pick one team principal, and they'll sort of get like quick little interview grabs real fast throughout the weekend. And they asked him during like one of the scraps, I think Alonso had just flown past Ocon on like the main original straight. And he's like, oh yeah, this is part of the strategy. We're totally calm. This is all part of the plan. He's like, just wait. He's like, they'll settle, they'll get into it, and then we'll set sail. Or he said something like that. And in my mind, I was like, dude, that's such bullshit. Yeah. You've got he's not a rookie by any means. He's extremely experienced, but you've got Ocon, who's, definitely way younger than Alonso and has not achieved nearly the same results. But I mean, they're in the same car. He wants to prove himself. They've been teammates. Was this their second year?
Yeah.
Second year, they just want to go for it. And it's so cool to see. But like, if I was on the corporate or team management side of that team, I would be shitting myself. Like, that was intense. And there was almost a moment when I believe it was Fernando attempting to overtake Ocon, and he just Fernando went for like a last minute overtake on the left, but then Esteban waited really, really late and cut him off, and it almost ended with Fernando in the wall. But of course, he's one of the best drivers ever. He corrected it, brought it back on course, stayed behind him. So it was just epic. It was so cool, but so irresponsible. But it paid off for them as well as it could. Of course, later on, Fernando had engine failure, unfortunately, but it was so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely fascinating. As a fan watching it, it was awesome. Like, it's been clearly proven through only 2 races that what they tried to do with the new regulations with the cars, how close they can battle, it's clearly worked. This is already just unbelievable up and down the field, how close they can battle. But that was very, very surprising how long that went on for. And yes, how calm and I don't even know the word for it, but you could tell that the guy that they interviewed was lying. Like, he was like, yeah, you'll see. They'll get it. They'll figure it out. And then they just kept going toe to toe the entire race. Fascinating. And then so the restart comes out back after the Latifi crash. The restart is around lap 20, and Perez and Sainz sort of had a bit of a tussle. I don't know what you'd say, coming out of the pit lane. Sainz thought he was entitled to third, but Perez went ahead just at the last second as Perez was coming out of the pit lane. And it took a long time for the stewards kind of to make a decision on what they were going to do. Sainz was very vocal on the mic that he was upset about what was going on, and they changed it that they don't necessarily give a ruling right away. I guess they kind of let the teams and drivers figure out what they want to do, and then if they agree with it, they'll just kind of let that slide. So Yeah, that was sort of interesting and played out a bit as the race went on. Did you have anything else on that?
Yeah, that was just neither driver, I would say, was in the wrong. Carlos was ahead, but also Sergio couldn't tell. You know, he obviously thought he was ahead of Carlos. So it ended almost in an incident, but luckily he was able to, or Carlos was able to avoid that. What you said was interesting. Yeah, Crofty, I think, explained that, I guess, so they can focus on the race and just be able to give it their full attention. They're, like you said, letting the teams decide that. But what I thought was interesting was that Red Bull waited until the restart to give Sainz a position back. Did they maybe not want to? Because I know you can't overtake during a safety car. Maybe they didn't want to check with the stewards. They're like, listen, just wait. As soon as it starts, we'll give it back to you. Like maybe it was that like that case, but it was just weird to me because he stayed in front for like 4 or 5 laps. It was just like he's gonna give the position back at some point. Like when's it gonna happen?
Yeah, it seemed very straightforward when it first happened, and it just sort of didn't. So I don't know really what to make of it, but it all ended up he did eventually give it back, and
Yep.
it cost both of them really in the race any chance at battling for those top 2 spots. So and really ended up making Perez just kind of stuck. He made up a bit of a run to come back, but he just was sort of stuck. So disappointing race given how it started and given how amazing his quality was.
Hugely disappointing.
Mm-hmm. So then we had the start of something else that went on for the rest of the race, these DRS strategies that, as we mentioned last week, you see happen online in like the F1 video game where someone pulls up before DRS to let the other guy go through so they can then pass them on the long DRS straights. But Leclerc, however you want to say it, is he is using it like to a T, you know, and it started early. But I am interested to ask you, because we'll get into the Max Charles battle, obviously, but I'm interested to ask you the way it's happening now, and we saw the double lockup at one point. Once they are sort of aware that this is the strategy that guys are doing, and they're just slowing down at the last second, do you think at some point it's going to become a little bit dangerous? The guys are just slowing up at the last second, depending on who's behind them, or if guys then decide, okay, if he slows up, I'm just going to go blow by him. Like, I don't know, I could see at some point it causing, as exciting as it is, don't get me wrong, it could cause a bit of a kerfuffle.
For sure. The double lockup's a great example. I feel like that was like the closest they got to actually completely binning it and either having one or both of them DNF. That's definitely going to be the case, I think, if a wreck ever occurs between those two, for sure. It was crazy. And you get to see a little bit of their personalities because up until that moment, Leclerc was just, he was poised, he was calm, he was patient, he was ready, he knew what Max was going to do. But like when they locked up, you saw he noticed that Max locked up too, but he just gunned it. And Max, I don't know if he couldn't, but like he gunned it like full on, flat out, takes off. And it's surprising because I don't know if it mattered like where he was, if there was a DRS zone up ahead or like what he was thinking, but it was just like so ballsy. And I was like, damn, I was like, if Max had done the same thing, it would just been like, it's just so many instances where like something like that could happen. So I feel like that's the biggest chance of like a wreck occurring between those two is like when they're pushing too hard and they're waiting for the last possible second to break. Because a lot of drivers did that today. I mean, Ocon, Stroll, Albon, obviously at the end, they waited too late. And I know they're still trying to get a feel for the cars, but it seems like that's one of the bigger issues skill wise is that drivers are waiting too long to go on the brakes.
Yeah, it was very interesting. It became almost, especially in that particular instance, it became almost like a game of DRS chicken. Like they were just waiting each other out so long to see. It was like, you go, no, you go, no, you go. It is fascinating. So it was also really cool to see Max and Charles sort of having like a game of wits and seeing on the fly. Like Charles did it again the first time it worked, tried it again the second time. Didn't really work. Third time they had the lockup, I think, and then we'll get into it in a minute. But then after that, Max sort of got the better of Charles on those moves. So it was very, very interesting to see the mind games go. So before that happened again, though, on lap around 33, 35-ish, one of the weirder laps in my brief F1 fandom, because 3 cars just pull up lane, and all of them just like it wasn't anything crazy, just the engine kind of slowed and they were struggling very much to get back to the pit lane. It was Alonso, Ricardo, and Bottas, so all different teams out of nowhere. And then this also kind of screwed over Lewis, which pissed me off because he was out there on the hard tires still forever waiting to pit. Yep. And this would have been, it almost worked out perfectly. So you got up to 6th from starting in 15th, which was amazing. And then he could have pitted and maybe still finished 6th, 7th, 8th, but the pit lane was blocked, and it opened like 2 seconds after he passed the pit lane, which they showed a good camera view of. But yeah, so he then had to pit the next lap after the virtual safety car ended from the 3 cars. So yeah, anyways, he dropped at that point from 6th to 12th, finished 10th and still got a point. But did you think there should have been an actual safety car there, or do you think virtual safety car was the right move?
I think virtual safety car was okay as long as all the drivers knew like where the cars were. I did want to say I did think it was funny, or not funny. It was just like classic Lewis. I think Bono had said something like, "We're pitting now, Lewis," and Lewis is like, "It's too late, man. It's too late. I've gone past it."
Just a meme waiting to happen.
That was maybe the most like sketched out I was the entire race, because especially when Fernando first started slowing down and he was like taking those corners extremely. So I'm like, someone's going to slam into the back of you. And like, that is so dangerous. And just another one of the many negatives of this track. So I was just on like pins and needles waiting to see like what would happen. But I think the virtual safety car was okay. And of course it was just so weird because Fernando slowed down, then Daniel slowed down. But right before that happened, Bottas had just a regular pit stop. Like, he didn't say, there was no word about him having problems or anything like that. But all of a sudden he's just in the pit for a minute, and then Fernando slows down. And they're like, all right, we're retiring the car. And then 3 cars like that. It's just out of nowhere. Like, do you think it was like because of the heat? Do you think it was just a sheer coincidence? Like, what do you think?
I don't have the slightest clue. I don't know any of these spec stuff, but like,
nope.
Just such a strange lap for it all to happen. Everything was sort of easing in. It almost seemed like Charles was starting to pull away a bit from Max, and it was just going to kind of be a relatively tame finish to the race. And then 1, 2, 3, just one after another, they go out, and then some guys are pitting, some guys weren't, some guys couldn't pit. The safety car comes in, Max made up. So yeah, after that happens, then they had the double lockup after that, I believe, and then they just start going back and forth, which was unbelievable on especially into turn 1. Those first few turns, they were just trading every lap, and Max was behind for quite a while. Charles pulled ahead, and then obviously Max just got him. I believe was it on the last lap that he passed him, or the second last lap that he finally got ahead of him, and then Charles was too far behind the DRS. He just couldn't quite catch up down the last straight. I think it was half a second that he ended up winning by 0.5.
Yeah, and Charles unfortunately did not get to use his DRS on lap 49 at the start of lap 49 because of the yellow flag. So he was robbed of one chance to overtake, which could have put him a little closer to maybe overtake him on like the final straight to the end. But yes, Max took it, and Leclerc, they both were really, really amazing, just fantastic drives. But I think I'm not gonna lie, I am a declared Red Bull Max fan, but I think Max got a little lucky today. I think if that yellow flag hadn't have happened and the safety car hadn't have happened, I don't think the win would have happened for him as nearly as easily, at least. I definitely think this was Leclerc's race, but all is fair in Formula One, of course. I love Max. I love Ferrari. Absolutely. It's just, it was wild. And one thing about Max as a driver that I want to say is just, he is so aggressive on safety car restarts. It stresses me out. And it took me back to Abu Dhabi when Lewis is just like, you could just tell he's just shocked. But he's waiting for the right moment to gun it, but Max is literally like there. It's like, even I'm like, bro, chill the fuck out. Like it's insane. It's like, it's bonkers just how aggressive he is.
Is that when Charles like kind of waved at him?
I think so. I did notice that.
I know they did it after the race too, but I think at that moment you couldn't tell if it was like a friendly hello or like a bro, like back off.
He's like, hey, fucking stop that. Like, hold on.
You'll have your chance. Just wait.
But yeah, sorry to derail that. I just had to bring that up because it's definitely something that I've noticed, and I know everybody has noticed. It's just mental. It's insane.
Yeah, it's wild. Like I it started out, like I said, almost like a DRS chicken, and then it turned into really a chess match. And I mentioned it slightly earlier, but to see Max and Charles having that game, that mental game, and Charles sort of having the upper hand at first, Max ending up, albeit slightly lucky, but Max did end up getting the better of him, and just it was clean. It was excellent racing, but to see Max, I'll give Max credit for this. And this is hard for me to do, but for obviously, if not the most aggressive driver on the grid, he's right up there.
Yeah.
He's always very aggressive. So to see him adapt mid-race to learn, I mean, maybe they're in his ear, who knows, but to adapt to the DRS strategy that Charles was employing and to adapt to that mid-race instead of waiting, until after the race to break it down. But to adapt to that and come out on top, I think showed a bit of maturity for Max that we haven't seen, and some poise, as they said on the broadcast. But yeah, even early in the race, Crofty was saying, like, as Charles lets him go by, this is Max Verstappen. Every time there's a gap, he's going to go for it. He's not going to pull up. But then the next time it happened, he did pull up, and the game was on. So it was very interesting to see that from both of them. And I think, again, to see Max kind of use Charles' strategy against him to learn from what happened last race, very interesting. Sets up for another. It's obviously not going to be the last time these two go at it this season. So very, very interesting. The chess match that is on now between those two, and hopefully it won't just be another 2-man race all season. Hopefully, but I don't think it will be. I think the other cars are close enough that Carlos will be in there at some point. There'll be some tracks that Checo will be up there. Hopefully Mercedes will get up there. I have a target date in mind for Mercedes for Lewis winning, and that is in Montreal, because I'll be there. That's in June. So hopefully I don't have to wait that long for his first race, but
that's a ways out.
First race win. But by then I'm hoping that Mercedes can be right up there in the battle, because having three guys at least would be like 3 amazing all-time racers potentially would be really, really cool to see. But regardless of the way it is now, I'm not complaining. It is it's really, really cool to see these two going at it. I would sign up for that every week.
Absolutely. And I will say, come Montreal, I will be 100% rooting for Lewis, just because I know how cool that would be for you to see Lewis win live in your home country. Like, that would just be like so cool. I want that for you. I want that for you.
I mean, it would be cool to root for a Canadian to win, but like that's not going to happen. So, I mean, you never know. There's been some crazier things, but it's realistically, there's no chance of it. So yeah, to see Lewis win in Montreal would be awesome. But as it stands now, they're probably a couple of races out from really competing at least. But hey, it's what we're getting right now is unbelievable. It's only been 2 races, but it's been unbelievable. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I guess onto the post race and some things we learned in the aftermath of the race. First being that kind of a scary thing that no one had any idea until after the race, that Pierre Gasly was going through what he said felt like survival in the last 10-15 laps. He was having severe intestinal pain, I believe it was. Like, he was screaming in pain as he was making the turns on the last 10-15 laps. Said it was one of the most painful things he's ever gone through in his life. So just kudos to him for sticking it out. I think he got 8th, so he got 4 points for the team. But wow, that's crazy. I don't know what happened. We'll probably find out in the coming days. But
yeah,
what did you think when you learned that?
It's a worthy sacrifice. Yeah, I actually didn't learn that was the case until like an hour ago, and that's just shocking to me. We all think the idea of being a Formula One driver would be the coolest job in the world, which it is. But when you hear the drivers talk about what it's like to drive a car or to drive a Formula One car, it sounds fucking shitty. It sounds like it destroys your body. So that's why these guys are luckily paid so much. They deserve it. Not only are they putting their lives on the line racing at these intense speeds, but they're putting their bodies through hell. Like, it doesn't feel good to do that drive. And sometimes things go wrong, like last year when Checo didn't have water like most of the race. Like, that's got to be torture. Like, how do you not dehydrate from all the sweat? Like, it's just props to Gasly for finishing the race. Like, he's one of the best drivers on the grid to me, like, at least in the top, like, scoring point drivers. I mean, like, he's just amazing. Love that guy. Absolutely.
Yeah, he seems to get the most out of, said this before, he seems to get the most out of that AlphaTauri.
For sure.
Almost week in and week out, he's very consistent. And then, so Albon, another former Red Bull driver, he got a 3-place grid penalty for Australia. I think he had a collision with Stroll or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, nothing really much on that. I do want to make a comment. Sorry, did you want to say anything on that?
I was gonna say well deserved, because it was a bonehead move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, certainly.
Williams they're definitely the worst team on the grid this year, which is unfortunate. But like this week was just embarrassing for them.
Yeah, very unfortunate. I had, I guess, high hopes sort of for them this year. I didn't have high expectations, but I was hoping that they'd move their way up a few spots, but doesn't look to be the case. I'm curious what you thought. So I watched on F1 TV this week. I figured out that they do have Crofty and Brundle. You just have to switch to the international feed. I guess it starts on like the pit lane channel or something. You just have to switch it to the international feed, and then you can get Crofty and Brundle. So I don't know necessarily what broadcast if it was the same, they would have shown the same broadcast to you if you were watching Crofty and Brundle. But my comment on this week's race was the replays. At least on the one I watched, they were showing way, way, way too many replays, and at the worst times. Even I think it was Jensen Button, who was on one of the commentators this week. He was even saying like, cut back to the race, because it was like guys were, even one of the leaders like Charles and Max were doing their DRS dance. They were cutting into replays, and like, yeah, the replays are good. You want to see them, but there was so much action going on the track live that like we have 2 weeks now to watch replays of what happened during the race. When there's stuff going on. It was frustrating, to say the least. Did you have that same experience?
100%. I fully agree with you. Yeah, I watched the Brundle broadcast. I watched the Sky Sports feed. Totally like overdone. Like, I understand every now and then, but like, this isn't football. This isn't regular sports. Like, there's not downtime. There's a race, and it doesn't stop. So it doesn't make sense to like why are we watching Aston Martin replay when the front runners are fighting right now? Like, get back to it. Like, even if it's a replay of Charles and Max, like, show us the replays. It seems like the TV race director or whatever, it just doesn't seem like they, and again, I have no experience in this field, so I don't know how hard their job is. I'm just judging them. It's not great. Last season there were problems as well. Last season the biggest problem was that they wouldn't show Max and Lewis at the front. Like, that they didn't show Sergio or Charles trying to get to Sergio at all in the broadcast. We were watching the Alpines, which is fine, but like, let's see everything, So I'm totally with you on that. Like, it was fucking bullshit.
Yeah, there's, like I said, the TV race director was, I don't know what's going on there, but they focused a lot on the midfield and a lot on the replays. And the midfield battles were great. I actually really enjoyed watching them, but there's a time and a place for that. Just wasn't as good as it could be. The F1 broadcasts are always incredible. It's
for
one of the best shows. Like, there's just nothing like F1. It gives me a rush like nothing else. But that was a little bit frustrating as they came down the stretch. So speaking of race directors, what's your opinion now through 2 races on the current, like the new race stewards and how they're handling things and sort of the new way they're going about letting the teams try to figure it out without injecting themselves?
I think it's gone pretty well so far. I think I like the sort of not strategy, but sort of the attitude that they have for this season. Some people have said that they feel like that they've been a little harsh, like with the Albon penalty, but I think that that's warranted as long as they are consistent, and they have been consistent. It's only been 2 races, but like that's my biggest wish going forward. Just I hope they stay consistent with the penalties. But so far, yeah, absolutely satisfied. I think they're doing a way better job than last year.
Yeah, I would agree. I think as long as they're consistent and I like that this year they've been concise with their rulings. There's no back and forth. I mean, they're not having the back and forth, but it's just this is what it is. Obviously, there was a little bit of a dispute with how long they took to figure out the Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez, when he's going to give the spot back. But I think part of that can be blamed on the teams and for Red Bull maybe for not just telling Checo to give the spot back.
No, yeah, for sure. I think it's completely on the teams.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They've made it clear, that it's that they'll only step in when it's like that type of situation if they absolutely have to.
Yeah.
So I think it was just on Red Bull just holding off too long.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And now I hope I might have spoiled it for you because I had this quote written in the thing. So hopefully you didn't see it, but
nope. I intentionally did not read that part. I'm looking forward to this.
All right. So it's got to play. Yeah. Guenther Steiner had an all-time quote today after the race. God.
Here we go.
Let's see.
Yeah, is it quite a nice position to be in now, that second race of the season, and you're thinking, ninth isn't quite the maximum this car could have got. We could have had more points.
No, it's always disappointing. You always want maximum, but then if you think about it, you cannot be too greedy. I mean, last year for 2 points, I would have fucked the whole paddock.
See, I don't know if you could make that out because of his accent, but last year for 2 points, he would have fucked the whole paddock. This Guenther's the best, man.
That's so fucking funny. That's fucking awesome. Oh my God.
He's the best. Just
dude, nothing like it. I'm so glad I didn't hear that. And I'm glad I've been off the subreddit for a couple of hours, dude. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's making the rounds. Just a great quote. He never disappoints.
No, and I want to say I'm so happy that Haas is finding success. Like they deserve it. They really do. Like I cannot imagine the stress that man has been under, and throughout all of it, he has kept, besides, when he's talking like fuck smashing my door, shit like that. We look like fucking assholes. Besides the tough parts, he's always had a great sense of humor and a great attitude. And I just love that team. So, obviously I was heartbroken for Mick this season, this race, but just so happy for them. Like he's by far, I think he's definitely my favorite team principal, by far, but like one of my favorite like faces or just names in Formula One. It's just so great.
Yeah, he's a great character, and the more success that Haas has, the more we're going to see from him. So it's going to be great. I know Mick talked today about how he didn't guarantee it, but he said he's going to get points in Australia. So it'll be fun to see that. Guenther loves Mick, so that's going to be great. And Kevin Magnussen's doing an incredible job already too. Yep. So before we get to our best and worst, let's go through the final. We haven't really given the final points. So first, Verstappen. Second, Charles Leclerc, who also got the fastest lap. So he got 19. Carlos Sainz, third, 15 points. Perez, fourth with 12 points. Fifth, Russell, 10 points. Sixth, Ocon, 8 points. Seventh, Norris, 6 points. Eighth, Gasly, 4 points. 9, Kevin Magnussen, 2 points. And 10th, Hamilton with 1 point. There were only 4 other guys that finished: Zhou Guanyu, Hulk, Stroll, and Albon. The others either didn't start or didn't finish. So after that, I'll just roll that into the driver standings and the constructors. So pretty interesting, pretty close. Charles Leclerc, obviously first place, 45 points. Then Sainz, 33. So the 2 Ferraris are 1-2. Then we got Max Verstappen, third, 25 points. Fourth is George Russell, 22 points. He's ahead of his teammate Lewis Hamilton, is fifth with 16 points. And then Ocon, 14 points. Perez, 12 points. Perez a bit down there. And Magnussen, 8th. Bottas, 9th. And Lando Norris rounds out the top 10. So some interesting stuff there. Anything jumps out to you before I get into the constructors?
Yeah, shout out to McLaren for actually being able to score some points this weekend. I know they've had a lot of struggles and they still do. A little bit of luck played their hand today, but I really hope that that Daniel Ricciardo can get some points in Australia. So I'm just happy that they aren't going to be at zero for another weekend at least.
Yes, they showed some growth this week, and I'm not sure if you saw Lando's post-race interview. He was very candid about how basically said our car sucks. It's awful in slow corners. And that they were trying to be positive and saying like, well, you guys showed some improvements this week, and said, oh, I don't know about that. Like it really depends on depends on the track. But like you said, if we were back in Bahrain, you would have saw the same thing. So it really just depends on the track. But it was nice to see him up there at least. And then the constructors. One thing that surprised me, but first place Ferrari, like they're growing their margin. It's 40 points already. So they're up by 78 points. They're at 78 points. Mercedes is still second place. That was what surprised me. They're at 38 points. And obviously Red Bull got conked out last week, but yeah, they're third place with 37. So just 1 point behind Mercedes. Fourth is Alpine, 16 points. Fifth, Haas, 12 points. Sixth, Alfa Romeo. Seventh, AlphaTauri. Eighth, McLaren. And then there's only two teams that haven't scored a point yet, Aston Martin and Williams. So it looks like, yeah, as we said, Williams is probably going to be at the bottom because you'd expect Aston Martin, you expect Seb to get at least some points at some point during the season.
I hope so, because they look like shit this year. Like I'm going to be totally like, that's just a complete, honest, candid, like Aston Martin does not look good this season.
No, they do not. The car itself looks nice, but the livery itself looks nice, but that is about where it ends, and all that money that Lance Stroll's dad put into the team, it doesn't really look like it paid off early, but they haven't really stood the test of time. So some heads are probably going to roll there. But any surprises? I guess I shouldn't have been surprised about the fact that Mercedes was still second, but given how Red Bull ended last week, but the fact that they're struggling so much and they're still right there with Red Bull, to me means hopefully that once they do figure it out, they could still battle with Red Bull, even if it's just for second place behind Ferrari. At this rate, with two drivers that are going to be at the top of the field every week, it looks like Ferrari probably, or might at least, run away with the constructors. The driver's championship looks like it's going to be close. But yeah, that battle for second and third, if Mercedes can pick it up within the next 2 months or so, will be very, very interesting to me.
Yeah, I think Mercedes' chances at potentially getting second or even first is going to depend on how hard Red Bull and Ferrari go at it. If Ferrari just runs away with the constructors and Max is the only one that stays competitive, then Mercedes will definitely not have a chance at first and they'll struggle with getting a second. It's just how fast can they get those upgrades, because they're definitely not going to stay second. But I'm also pretty confident that they're not going to, I don't think there's any chance they'll drop to fourth. Like I think third is almost guaranteed for them, but I know that's like disaster for them is third place, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. I think the not worst case scenario, but what we don't want to see as Mercedes fans is kind of what happened with George this weekend. It's good to see he had a great weekend, but just literally being in no man's land out there in fifth place. No one really close behind you, except I guess Lewis would be there if he had the same car, but just those two stuck amongst themselves with the Red Bulls and Ferraris off in the distance. That would be very, very frustrating. Will make for a long season, but if the racing's good at the front, then just as a racing fan, it's going to be very good.
I wonder what George's like true thoughts are. Like, obviously he's thrilled to be in the Mercedes, but there's no way he thought that he would be in no man's land in fifth place. Like that's nutty. Yeah,
he's got to be pissed. Like he's still his best chance at a win was when he raced a couple years back, filling in for Lewis that one race. Like you got to think he was coming in thinking that every weekend he's going to be going for wins, and I mean at some point he will be, but not yet. That's for sure.
Oh, there's no doubt that he will be though. Like it will be Russell Verstappen. I think. I think whatever season that is, whatever year it is, but it's imminent.
Those two and Charles going for it eventually. That's the future. So and Lando, Pepper some Lando in there.
Let's hope we can get a little orange, a little papaya, hopefully.
Yeah, that's the hope. So let's move on to our segments here. We got best and worst moments. I'll let you go first. Best moment, you got one?
Yes, my best moment is, oh gosh, it's tough. Let me start with my worst moment.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say my worst moment is Albon crashing into Stroll. And I know there's another DNF that's probably more noteworthy, but it was just so boneheaded and just pointless. And it's just like, come on, Albon, you were in a Red Bull. Like, let's get it together.
Yeah.
But gosh, my best moment for the entire Grand Prix has got to be the final lap. I think I didn't know if Max was going to win. I mean, I was even in the last like 5 to 10 seconds in the last part of the straight. I was like, Leclerc could catch him with that PU. So amazing racing, and just that final lap was the icing on top. Like, it was so cool. What about you?
Yeah, that was fantastic. Yeah, so my best, I'm gonna say the midfield battles, up and down, whether it was Ocon versus Alonso, or even like Lando had some nice moves, George Russell had a few nice moves throughout the race. It was it was fantastic. There's although I feel like they focused a little bit too much on it during the broadcast, maybe the actual racing itself was phenomenal. And as I said earlier, the new cars, the new things they've done to make the racing better, that has 100% paid off, and it's going to be fantastic to watch that the rest of the season.
Absolutely.
Worst. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I'm so excited. I've said that so many times, so sorry, go ahead.
I know, me too. Yeah, my worst was definitely Lewis being unable to pit, because that would have been great if he could have gotten up in 6th and gotten 8 points for the team. That would have been huge. Would have given him a little more of a gap between them and Red Bull, but that's okay. It was just an unfortunate kind of set of events. Not a great weekend all around for Lewis, but one of the first times I've seen recently, kind of not threw the team out of the bus, but he didn't really just take full blame on himself. Like he said, like I forget the exact quote, but he basically said like the team made some errors, or like the team he has some questions for the team, something along those lines.
Yeah, something like that. And to his credit, it's always in the past, it's always been like, I'm sorry guys, I'll try to do better next time. But yeah, and I know Bono even said, he was like, I'm sorry, Lewis, we'll give you a good car. Like,
yeah.
So it's understandable, but it's unfortunate.
Right. No, I agree. Okay, so that takes us to our hard and soft awards.
Let's do it.
All right. So I'm going to give my hard to, might be surprising because he didn't win the race, but I'm going to give it to Charles. One for sort of sparking this whole chess match, this whole DRS new strategy that they're doing. He seems to be the one that's mastered it coming into this. And for sort of being able to change Max Verstappen's driving style a little bit. Lewis wasn't able to do that last year. And already, I mean, obviously the cars and how close they can follow has a lot to do with it this year. But still, within 2 races, he's gotten Max to, I mean, this may come back to bite him, but he's gotten Max to think about the fact that you don't have to overtake every single possible time you can. Sometimes it's better to kind of hold back a little bit. And then my soft, this isn't any sort of bad thing against Checo himself, but I think his team, like Team Perez, a mixture of bad luck and I think kind of bad decision making gave Checo an unfortunate spot in this race. Obviously, like they got psyched out a little bit by Ferrari with the initial pit. They pitted on the first lap. They could have stayed out. There's no way to tell that was going to happen. But then on the Sainz overtake pit lane thing, it helped Max because it didn't allow Carlos to get into that race and make it 2 Ferraris against 1 Red Bull, 1, 2, 3. But it also hindered Sergio from having a chance to get past Carlos and then make it a Red Bull, 2 Red Bulls and a Ferrari. So it's already evident, and I think this is no surprise, but it's already evident that it's Max number 1 and it's Sergio number 2, and that's how it's going to be, and that's what he signed up for. But that would be my soft, is not giving Checo the same attention and opportunity that they give Max.
Yeah. Gosh. So I have some reasons, but I'm going to give my hard award to Checo. Okay. Just because, and I fully agree with what you said. He was screwed over by his team. They pitted too early. They bought into the bluff, but that qualifying lap by Checo, him getting his first ever pole and just having it taken away from him, not by his own mistakes. And yeah, he made that mistake later in the race, but gosh, that pole lap was just massive. It was amazing, and it came out of nowhere too. So that was one of the biggest like shocks and like happy surprises of the entire weekend. So got to give that to him. But again, totally agree with everything you said. My soft award is Latifi for Perez. I have to do it. And it's 3 Grand Prix in a row that he's caused a safety car, or at least a virtual safety car. But like, come on, man. Like, and Mazepin's not there to take all the hate, like it's all on him. So, and of course he does not deserve the massive wave of hate he's getting online. That's total bullshit. If you're threatening somebody online, you're a piece of shit. But yeah, you got my soft award today, buddy. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's completely warranted. It's kind of funny that it was like last year when the whole Latifi thing happened in Abu Dhabi. Obviously, it led to the situation, we can call it, with Max and Lewis.
The situation.
Horner joked after that Latifi's going to get a lifetime supply of Red Bull now. Obviously a joke. Didn't go over very well among some people, but I mean, it's a joke.
Yeah.
But after today, I think they might have to pull that free lifetime pass, because he really did screw over Checo, because they said Checo was just cruising. And I think everyone really would have just been happy to see him win. Who knows if he would have been able to hold everyone off, but it would have been cool to see, at least.
It would have been cool to see how he, at least if Leclerc was able to catch him, which he would have with pit strategies and their power unit. It would have been really awesome to see how Checo handled the chess game, as you call it. But yeah, it's just sad.
Yeah, it is. You mentioned earlier wanting to say something about Maxi Boy's radios today.
Oh yeah. Specifically, I know people have commented and they've said that it's like tradition for the previous world champion to like come in and whine a bunch, but it felt like he was, I don't know. And I know it's just like that instinct where you're just trying to get every possible edge you can over your teammate. But like he complained that Charles like crossed the pit line like 3 or 4 times. And it's like, yes, he did, but it's also on the track. Like he didn't go into the pit lane and then veer over the barrier, over the whatever you call the little cross out area or whatever it's called. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's a curb there, but yeah, it felt like whiny to me. It's like, bro, like, let's not bitch that much. Like you're Red Bull, but like, don't be that much like Red Bull. Like, come on. Mm-hmm. And then also when he was bitching about, and I do kind of see in the moment like where he was coming from, but he was like, it's unfair that Leclerc caught up to me. And I guess because of a yellow flag, but at the same time, it was like only in a certain sector. And also, I don't know if you noticed this, but like it flashed green flag 2 different times before immediately going back to yellow. So that whole situation was just strange. And there was a lot of talk that maybe the entire top 3 could be given penalties because they weren't really slowing down. Like, we'll be real. Like, but Max wasn't either. So I just feel like the complaining got a little out of hand this weekend, but what can you do?
Yeah, that and complaining about the lights on Leclerc's car.
Yeah, that too.
Like, I mean, it doesn't. I guess they were saying like the only reason he would care is because then you can tell when he's harvesting battery. But
yep,
at that point he wasn't within striking distance, and the way he was going on about it, like it's just his tone. Sometimes it's like, oh, you're such a little baby. But I mean, the way his upbringing and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny, like I said last week, but it's also just like, grow up, man. Like, you're the world champ now. You should be, a little more content with everything. And also like, yeah, all of these things, they're things that he, regardless of whether he's right or wrong, doesn't have any control over. If there is an actual issue going on, 100% his team is going to have noticed it, and they're going to be the ones that are on it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a bit of like screaming into nothingness, but hey, if he needs to do that to get himself revved up or whatever the case may be, then whatever he's doing is working. So any final thoughts on the race before we do our wrap up?
Gosh, I think we covered everything. I mean, so much happened. The only thing that we didn't remark on, Nico Hulkenberg is getting a lot of shit because people are saying that he did trash, that he's not any good. He shouldn't be the reserve driver. Just shut the fuck up. He's a great driver. He was a great driver. He's one of the most unlucky drivers in the history of Formula One, but he beat Stroll. He beat Stroll, and he showed more poise and more talent than Stroll did today. And that's in a crappy car. And he was in the points at some point. Like he didn't get any points, but he was in 9th place or 8th place at some point. So like, just give the guy props. Like it's Nico. Come on.
Absolutely. The Hulk. It was
the Hulk.
It was sad. They even marked on the broadcast. It was kind of sad. Couldn't help but feel for him as he was up. He was doing such a great job up in the points, and then every lap on between like turn 1 and 4, 1 or 2 cars were just going by him, and he was losing spots every time. And it was by nothing he could do. It was just the pace of the car. It's not that he wasn't driving it well or anything of that nature. So yeah, it was cool to see him back. I think we would have to imagine Vettel will be back in the car in Australia. I hope he is. It'll be nice to see him back. But it was a cool little stint for Hulk. And if anything, it just showed that Stroll isn't really up to snuff.
No,
but he's also probably not the worst driver on the grid this year. That currently belongs to Latifi, but we'll see. And it's not, like we say, it's not an easy job. By no means is saying Latifi's a bad driver or anything like that. Like the stuff he gets online is ridiculous, but there's got to be one, and Mazepin's not there anymore. So Latifi seems to have taken up that threshold.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a damn shame they're both Canadians too. I gotta say,
the bottom 2 guys, it's tough. It is tough. So hopefully by Australia, one of them will figure something out. So that is our next race. We have a week off, so we'll have to figure out what we're going to do in terms of an episode. We're going to finally do our Drive to Survive episode. But
full review.
A reminder for now, obviously we're going to we'll do a full review of that. We'll do a full Australian GP preview on next week's episode, but just prepare yourself because it is a 1 a.m. quali and a 1 a.m. race. That's Eastern time. So sounds nice, the 1 a.m. start, because I can just stay up, but then you realize that it's going to end at like 3 o'clock. Yeah. And then you're not going to be able to fall asleep right after because it's going to be jacked up, and it's going to throw things off for a few days.
Oh, absolutely. And it definitely will not fall asleep as soon as it's over, because I just want to read about what I just read and hear people's reactions. But yeah, if you are in the Eastern time zone, then it will be at 1 o'clock in the morning start time. I feel like this is the only race where it pays to be in the Western time zone. But if you're on the California side, it starts at 10 p.m. That'll be the only time where you'll be happy to be a Western USA viewer, because most of the time the races start at 6 and 7 a.m. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, though. I'm very excited to stay up way too late.
Yeah, no, me too. But we've got a good week of content coming up. We'll get the video up by hopefully Monday night, and then some clips Tuesday, and then we're going to start posting some shorts, some TikTok videos and Instagrams. Why don't you give us your personal handles and all the hard or soft handles so that people can go there and give us a follow?
Yeah, absolutely. My handles are just Adrian C. Huff on Instagram. Or Adrian Huff on YouTube. That's pretty much all I use. But Hard or Soft F1 Pod. So we will be posting clips as usual, but we are going to be posting the same clips, just formatted differently on TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts. I get those confused. Mm-hmm. So lots more content on lots of different platforms. Of course, the regular video podcast, which you're listening to or watching right now. We've got a subreddit, r/hardersoft podcast, hardersoft podcast, r/. Check that out. And I know we said we're not going to give anything away but we are going to have a very special guest over the next coming weeks. Not anytime very, very soon, but we will have a very cool guest very soon. Hopefully many cool guests, because I don't know what you're thinking, but I'm very excited about the future of this podcast. Like, we're still lying low, but like very soon we're about to pop off.
Yeah, we're about to take it to the top. So it's good. We appreciate everyone that's been along for the ride from the start, or anyone that's hopping along right now. You can follow me. I mainly use Twitter, so my own Twitter is at RJ McCullough, RJMCCULLOUGH, and our Harder Soft Twitter. Mainly active during races, but I'm happy to, anytime you guys want to reach out to us, whatever platform you use, our Twitter is at HarderSoftF1. So give us a follow there. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. Another fun episode, and we'll be back at some point this week with one episode, maybe two. So yeah, thanks again for listening. Another great race. The season is off to an incredible start, and hopefully Lewis can get up there at some point this year. But just
let's hope so.
Congratulations to Max. Hate to say it, but he had a great race today. Charles, another great race, and that's all I got.
Yeah, absolutely. Great episode. Thank you again. It's a pleasure to do this show with you, and I can't wait to do many more episodes. So thank you all for listening, and thank you for continuing to listen to us. Rate us 5 stars, subscribe, share, do whatever you can, because we're a new podcast. We need it, and we appreciate it. So thank you guys. We'll see you next week.